topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk on this sweltering Wednesday night. I am Wendy Stuart, your host, and once again, our guest co-host, Evan Laurence. Hi, Evan.
Hello. Good evening, Wendy. How are you?
Do I even call you a guest anymore? You're not a guest because you've been on a couple of times.
I'm recurring.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. You know, that's good. I'm gonna totally use that. How was your day today?
It was good. I tried to move as little as possible.
How do you do that, Evan?
You know, I'm recovering. I'm a little bit in mourning. I had to put my cat to sleep on Monday, and she was 13 years old, but she was really suffering, and I'm glad she isn't anymore.
Right. And you know, because you're a spiritual person, she's in a better place. And I mean, the way all of us are with, I hate calling them our animals. I call my little menagerie my fur babies. And to anybody listening that has dogs, cats, rabbits, chinchillas, or ferrets, they're our very good friend Jed Ryan has two ferrets. You know, our fur babies are everything to us. Now, even with all of that, Evan, I know you were in mourning, but you did Bronx Pride. Tell us a little bit about Bronx Pride.
That was very interesting. Besides a 2-hour trip up there and back,
Bronx is far.
It was like an outdoor coliseum hosted by Apollonia Cruz, who put this huge event together, and she definitely needs more help. I had a 2-hour wait to perform, which was fine. You know, I enjoyed the whole experience, and it was great performing live in front of strangers in a park, in Crotona Park. And
yeah, it's the whole thing with because a lot of the shows that we do are in front of, you know, people in the entertainment industry or, you know, like-minded people, but it's a whole different ball of wax when you go somewhere and it's strangers, and then it's also in a park. So it's not a selected audience. It's an audience that can just be strolling through the park.
Yeah, it's true. And I was very successful with my first song. I'm not sure about the second one, but you know, I mean, this is a random crowd, so who knows what's going to happen.
Listen, you know what? Performers have to take risks, and you took a risk, and you were out there and you did your thing. And I heard it poured as well.
Yeah, it actually poured while I was on the train. So, when I got off, it just sprinkled a little and it was all gone.
Then you weren't singing in the rain then, Evan. It was all good.
Nope, it was great.
No singing in the rain for you. So this Sunday, I am with the Imperial Court of New York. We're doing Christmas in July. I've written a really funny parody for it. Very clean too, I may add.
Wonderful. And I probably will also hear them a week from Friday on July 29th at Otter Shrunken Head.
I will have another Christmas show. Yeah. I will have another Christmas in July at your show, Evan Laurence, because you know what? It's July and we need a little Christmas in July together. So, right? Don't you agree that we have
right this very minute?
Right this very minute. And you know what? We need things, ladies and gentlemen, that keep us up and keep us happy. I have got to these days, of course, what I say is I filter the news. I totally stay in touch with everything that's going on. And certainly, if you go to Triversity's site, Mary Weber Krause aggregates the most incredible articles about any of the laws and anything affecting the LGBTQ plus community. I read that, but in the world, I have to like kind of sometimes go la 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 la. I have to put my blinders on, right? Because there's a lot of stuff going on out there, and if you start paying attention to all of it, it'll make you not want to get out of bed, and it'll make the positive things that we all want to do in our life more difficult to do. So that's why tonight's guest is absolutely perfect to be here. Our guest tonight is a psychotherapist advocating and validating the marginalized and their allies. And tonight's guest also works with cognitive-based therapies and helps people achieving that wellness balance. I'd love for you all to meet Dwayne Brown. Thank you. Hey.
Hello, Wendy.
Welcome.
Hi, Wendy. Hello, Evan.
Hi.
Sorry for your loss, Evan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I lost one in December.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Dwayne. And thank you for saying that to Evan. Dwayne, did you lose a cat also?
Not a cat. My Havanese of 15 and a half years.
Stop.
In December. It was quite tough. But yeah, made it through it, but it was very challenging. Oh. So my heart goes out to you, Evan.
Right. It is very, it's very, very challenging. My last Chihuahua, Mr. Fudge, ate a rock at 14. And it was bad. But I did something a lot of people don't do. I gave myself a week, and you're a good person to talk about this with, Dwayne, because of what you do. I gave myself a week, and then I thought, I have a big void, right? Because you can never fill the pause of the one that came before, but there's a void left, and I couldn't live with that void. So I went online, and I saw some puppies had been born outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania, and that's how I got Mr. Nugget. It is ironic because this one I'm so attached to. It's like it's sick. I want to do what the Mayans do. They were buried with their dogs. That's what I want. That Mama and Nugget will be buried together.
We're hoping you outlive your dog.
Thank you, Evan. But if it doesn't happen, and Dwayne and Evan, if you come to the funeral, just say this is what she wanted.
Oh.
You'll be my.
I'm glad you took care of yourself. And, there is no, timeline as to when you should get a new pet or when you should start dating after a loss. It's like you need to do what speaks to you. And I think it's really admirable that you took care of yourself. You knew that you couldn't sit and wait, that you needed that companionship, and you went and got another dog. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thank you for getting that. And yeah, there's not a day that goes by. I wake up every morning and I say, thank you, universe, for sending this wonderful soul into my life. Yeah. Listen, we all need to be able to take care of ourselves now. These to me are unprecedented times. Right. And you know this now, as a therapist, you just started, I know you've been seeing clients for a long time, but you just started your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about that, little background?
Yeah, sure. So, I started, I worked for an agency for many years. And then I also worked Tuesday and Thursday nights. I started a small private practice working with 3 people on Tuesday nights, 3 people on Thursday nights. And just as the pandemic, during these times of this pandemic, the social work field has definitely seen its growth. Social workers, therapists, we've always kind of been like at the bottom of the rung, and when it comes to healthcare, but during the pandemic, people really came to understand how important mental health was. And so in that, it was an influx of people coming to agencies, people coming to private practice, looking for support. And I just saw the opportunity. I've been with this agency for 4.5 years, and I have a great mentor. And he was like, I think this is the time for you to, launch your practice. And so I did that. I resigned on May the 27th. With 6 clients, private practice clients, and today I have 22. I mean, it was It was a pretty quick ramp up. I mean, I wasn't expecting this at all, but
So
it's been amazing.
that's amazing. And I want to congratulate you, first of all, for growing your business since May to that degree. But the other thing is, my God, that people need to take care of themselves to this degree because we're not being taken care of right now, right?
No.
People that aren't seeing therapists, I mean, it's like anything goes out there. And with everything that came down during the pandemic, you know, we've all heard this. The United States is the richest country in the world, blah, 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 blah. You're right, Dwayne. We completely forgot about mental health, that social workers and therapists were definitely lower on the totem pole. And now I know most of my friends that are therapists, their businesses are bursting at the seams.
Yes.
So what does that say about our society?
It's pretty tough out there right now. I mean, with the pandemic, with the political scene that's out there, the Roe versus Wade, the rolling back of Roe versus Wade, and then this second, virus, monkeypox. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but
Wayne, you don't know you're familiar with all of them. As a matter of fact, there's a brand new virus they just found in Ghana that's like Ebola, and they're trying to contain it, but they found it. Yeah, so keep going.
Yeah, well, I guess what I want to say when it comes to the LGBT community, we were quite triggered by the handling of COVID. For many reasons, particularly people that survived the AIDS epidemic and also the families of those that didn't survive the AIDS epidemic, because, it took the U.S. over 2 years to really step up to provide vaccine or provide medications for HIV, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so people find themselves quite triggered around COVID, because COVID was a worldwide pandemic. It was heterosexual people that were coming down with it, and the world moved on it very quickly.
Right.
And so people found themselves very upset, very triggered by the way that the world handled COVID versus HIV.
Right.
And then 2 years of living with this pandemic, this new monkeypox virus hits, and again, it's focused on the LGBT community, and we can't get. And there's a monkeypox vaccine out there. We've had it, and it's not available. And so again, people are finding themselves triggered and very upset by the way that the LGBT community is being handled around viruses.
If you go this article, I read it this morning, they profiled 5 different men with monkeypox, okay, and what they had to go through. Now, first of all, monkeypox is so painful. The lesions are absolutely so painful. They're in pain. They're calling quote unquote these emergency numbers. Not only can't get the vaccine, but there's a couple of antiviral drugs that can lessen the symptoms.
Right.
They can't get those either. Finally, there were 2 people on there that seemed to know how to work the system that were able, I think, to get them through Bellevue Hospital. But to your point, you're absolutely right. It is like reliving. I mean, for me, because we're part of a big AIDS organization in the 80s, and I lost many friends. All of this is coming up again. I'm like, I can't believe that this is happening again, because, okay, back then they didn't, we had, till they came up with the cocktails, every damn thing they came up with, one was just worse than the next. ACT killed so many people. But now, right, with all of the research and everything, we know there is a vaccine for monkeypox, and we know there's antivirals they can be giving people, and they're dragging their damn feet again. So yeah, triggering. You're right.
Yes, very true.
It's absolutely triggering. Have you had clients express this concern to you regarding monkeypox?
Yes, definitely had them, concerned about monkeypox. Also finding themselves very triggered by COVID, and just kind of like rehashing the challenges of the AIDS epidemic. Yes.
Right.
definitely.
So how would you start with somebody who is feeling like we all do? I mean, how would you start treatment with them?
From a being triggered, I guess one would be to talk about and well, it's trauma, right? So it's traumatic. I would definitely want to sit down with them and we would process the trauma. Like sit down, talk about what is it that's triggering about this, identify the feelings that are attached to it, because trauma doesn't go away. But what you can do is, as you process it and talk about it, and actually able to identify the actual specific feelings, not just like I'm angry, I'm really coming up with true, like I'm frustrated, whatever it is, but coming down with what it is that's truly the feeling. It starts disseminating. It starts losing
Name
its
it so it
power.
isn't an invisible thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people end up stuffing their feelings and not really dealing with how they're feeling, and they're not dealing with the trauma of the experience.
Right. But that's, you know what? That's understandable. And that's why they come to you, right? But in the world, amongst our friends, amongst the gatherings and things that we go to, it's still people. I think the natural tendency is to put on a good face and not to show like what's happening in here. And I guess what's become so triggering for me because of the pandemic, right? So I came through the AIDS era and went into the 90s angry. Okay, too many people died. Optimistic because there were people I was actually able to get those off-label drugs for, and they're still alive. So that was the good thing I could hang on to. But the whole thing that happened to the people that passed, to the families that lost their sons and daughters, right? It should have never gone to that degree. And we all know, right, how it got that way. And you would think we've evolved to now and we don't want to see history repeating itself. And yet, I can tell you, I read these maps where cases of this and cases of that, and monkeypox is really growing. So before it ends up doing what happened with HIV, let's get a handle on it. Let's make the vaccines and everything available.
Yeah. Those in power aren't talking about it.
They're talking about it, right? And right, Evan, every minute they're talking about it, and somebody's getting infected. Do you feel, Dwayne, and maybe this is a pointed question, do you think if it were the general population and not and by the way, here's what I believe. I believe this monkeypox is going to be everywhere. Let's face it. HIV predominantly started in the gay community, but you know what? Come on. Logic tells us these are viruses. They freaking spread. So, what do we do as people? What can we do to make things accountable? I mean, I have to tell you both, and Evan, you know about this. Evan and I perform in bars that are very crowded a lot of the time. People are on top of each other. I won't even mention masking because they don't. And Evan, you know some of the clubs that we've been in, and it's a risk. And if you say anything to anyone, they look at you like, you've got a horn coming out of your head or something. Evan, you've certainly been more careful than me through this whole thing. I get sloppy. I admit it. I've had COVID 3 times because of it. I paid the price every single time. But, now with this monkeypox thing, they're calling it sexually transmitted, but there are cases, if you follow it, where it's been skin to skin. So, I think of those sweaty bars and people on top of each other. They got to get on this, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the key is just people getting vaccinated, taking care of yourself the best way, that whatever it is that makes you comfortable. If it's not going to sweaty bars, if it's not, I go to a gym and, it's like, it's very easily transmittable through just skin contact or, surfaces. So it's like, I think the best thing to do is to get vaccinated.
Right.
But again, that's a challenge because the vaccine isn't available, it isn't readily available.
But your job is, I mean, I'd say part of your job would be to help people live without fear.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about live without fear, but to have a healthy amount of fear.
Right.
You know, to have a healthy approach to fear. It's okay to be fearful, but you know, are you isolating at home? Are you, you know, being obsessive about it, about not going out? Is it impeding your daily activities of living? You know, fear motivates people. You know, it's like fear isn't necessarily a bad thing. So it's just making sure that someone has a healthy level of fear. And if they don't, talking about it, processing it, you know, helping them come to understand that, you know, where they're at with their fear level, they should consider, you know, trying to adjust that and be more, try to be open to not being so fear-based.
Okay.
I mean, I have a director I worked with that wrote a book, Fear is Good. I have to give you that book because it's got, you know, the picture from the Scream. Who thought, Monk, right? Who did that picture again?
Edward Monk.
Right. So that screaming figure, it's on the cover of the book, and the book is about Fear is Good. And I agree with you, Dwayne. It's you know what it is? It's a healthy balance of fear, you know, not being stupid, not being selfish. You need to have I think a healthy balance of fear in your life. You know, because that's what makes you take the right steps. And you know what, you could roll this healthy balance of fear into the thing about self-care. Somebody comes to see you, Dwayne, it's about self-care, right?
Well, I commend anyone that comes to that seeks therapy. You know, there's a lot of people out there in the world. I mean, lots of people that never seek therapy.
Right.
I like to call therapy the gym for the mind. You know, a lot of people come to therapy. A lot of people come to therapy in an acute situation like a breakup or, you know, some type of family issue. But there are also people that come to therapy just for the maintenance of their minds. You know, people go to the gym to work out their bodies. People go to the therapist to work out their minds. And it can be a very maintenance-based activity. You know, can definitely be a supportive way to be able to, you know, deal with certain things that are going on in your life. All therapy isn't necessarily like something bad going on. You know, therapy can also be a space to, you know, discuss ideas, dreams, you know, the things that you want to do, strategize your career, things like that.
So it becomes a very supportive thing as well. I think the analogy that you gave of the gym is really good. I go to the gym because it makes me feel good, you know, and it makes my body feel a certain way, and then all of that makes me happy, and then I have the energy that I want to have. And therapy works that way too. If you like you said, if you can discuss your dreams with someone, and you can't always do that, right, with your friends.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about therapy is you are meeting with someone that is typically unbiased, usually unbiased. It's a confidential space. The only time that a therapist would report anything is if you said you were going to hurt yourself or someone else. So it's confidential.
Right.
And, you know, family and friends are great for some things, but, you know, they're always going to be putting in, not always, but a lot of times they're putting in their opinions on things. And, you know, sometimes they have other motivations in their response to the things that you're trying to talk to them.
Right. Right. They also don't have the background or the training that you have. You know, obviously, if you want to discuss things in a neutral field, I think your therapist, right, is a good person to do it with. That is a neutral party, and that that makes sense. So, what made you decide to become a clinical social worker and therapist?
So I was in sales and marketing for 20 plus years, and I just basically got tired of my income being based on the economy.
Right.
And I've always been a caring and thoughtful person.
Mhm.
And I just saw this opportunity to do something different, kind of out of the box for me. I was literally a businessman. And I decided, I'm like, if I'm gonna end up, if I'm not, if I'm gonna end up, if I'm gonna change careers, I need to be doing something that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about helping people. And so I owned my own show. I was a women's wholesale fashion. I had a women's wholesale fashion showroom, and
Can I ask
I
what
just
label
saw the
it
writing on the
was?
wall.
What label was it? What was your label? What was your brand?
Oh no! So I my showroom was called Iconoclast Showroom, and I repped like eight women's brands. I
Oh, which
had
I probably know because I work in the fashion industry. I mean, I'm listening to what you're
okay.
saying. You're tired of your income being based on really how frivolous the economy is, and I'm thinking, yeah, gosh, I feel that way.
It was just very volatile, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm getting older, and I'm like, I got to figure things out and do something
Right.
different. But it's funny because when I was a kid, all of my neighbors, like people, just used to always talk to me. And my parents used to actually get upset because grown men and women, my friends' parents, were always talking to me. And I don't know, I was just really good at listening. And so I told my older sister, who was like my mentor at one point, I was like, I think I want to be a psychiatrist. And a psychiatrist is actually someone that assesses someone's mental health and prescribes and that's really not what I wanted. I really didn't want to be a doctor. So anyway, it was just very interesting because I ended up meeting with a friend of mine that was a therapist, and I just said, hey, I think I'm interested in being a therapist. I'd like to talk to you more about it. And they kind of showed me kind of like the ropes and what it would take, and I went back to school. At 48, I went back to school to be a therapist, and I got my master's in social work. And then I immediately graduated and went to work for an agency. And then you have to accumulate 2 years and 250 hours of clinical based work. And then you can become, you can sit for the test to become a clinical.
And don't you also have to go through therapy yourself?
That's not, no, you don't. Now, I believe that as a therapist, you should see a therapist. Like I definitely have seen it. I see a therapist, and have seen one since I was in school. And I saw one before I even came into the industry, into the field. I'm really one of these people that find it to be very, very supportive.
Agreed.
In my life.
I mean, you have to show so much empathy and hear all these stories and people's lives. It must affect you. I mean, what is your release to put yourself back in balance?
Yeah. So, wellness and self-care doesn't stop with the client. It also is something that I have to do. And there's different realms of wellness. There is physical wellness, there's spiritual wellness, there's mental wellness, and professional. I think I'm missing one. And social. So there's social wellness, like socialization. There is physical wellness. There is professional wellness. There's spiritual wellness and mental wellness. Right. So in those 5 realms, like I have different practices that keep me, pretty balanced. Wow. And self-care, people think that self-care is going and getting a mani and pedi. It's so much bigger than that.
Yeah, really.
In the professional realm, do you set boundaries and make sure that you're, working the amount of hours that you're comfortable working? Do you set boundaries with your boss? Socialization. Are you getting out and making time for yourself and your loved ones? When it comes to physical, I work out 3 to 4 days a week. and I eat healthy, and I drink. There's a lot of behavioral things in wellness. So like I drink, you know, six to seven glasses of water a day. I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I eat 3 square meals a day plus snacks.
That's good.
You know, all of these things are things that keep me and a person that practices wellness in a more balanced mood state.
Excellent.
Well, everything you're describing, I do. But I'm very structured, and I have to do this because I'm very structured. And not everybody totally understands the 4 times a week. For me, it's 3 to 4 times a week workout. The setting and the boundaries, I find people have an issue with, and sometimes I get a little guilty when I start setting those boundaries. But you know what? As you get older, you start to feel better about making those choices. That's what I want to say.
Oh, absolutely.
And the boundaries are really important. It was something I had a big issue with because I would let hours go by and get, 4, 5, 6 phone calls, texts from people that I would say are EDing, which means emotional dumping. Because like you, I've always been a good person to talk to. Right. And unfortunately, my daughter inherited the same ability, but she's got me for a mom. So I told her, you got to be careful with friends that they're not EDing your time. And you can't be afraid to, right? Evan, you know what I'm saying is true, to put up that wall and say, you know what, I have to go now, and that's it. It's okay to do that.
Please take your vampire teeth out of my neck.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I call
emotional vampires.
Yeah,
right.
Yes.
Right. Get your teeth. Right. Get your emotional vampire teeth out of my neck. But even to this day, I catch myself. I have to work to catch myself from doing that. This one thing I learned really from the pandemic, I came to a lot of self-realizations. Now, you have to understand. Yeah, a lot of people did. And I've had people on my other show and even on this show, oh, the pandemic was good because it made me do this, that, and the other. The pandemic made me very angry, Dwayne. Angry. Because a career that I had 45 years in stopped. Cold stone stopped. Along with, right, the financial, everything. Like my world blew up. And I'm like, this is unacceptable. So part of finding my space again was realizing what my power was. That was not a victim. And I had to, and the thing, even with the power, I still have to work on that. Instead of waiting for the call, making the call, being the one. Right. I know you understand this, initiating the call, being the one. I hate using this phrase. Who came up with this? Taking the bull by the horns. I hate that. Evan, do we have anything better than that? What do we?
I could twist that phrase around, but you're not going to like it.
Oh, is it right? Grabbing by the cañones?
Something in that vein.
But it's, it's being able to take your power back as a person. And certainly for both Evan and I, the entertainment industry, the fashion industry, the level of, I think in those particular industries, Dwayne, the level of victimization is absolutely through the roof. Because, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I worked for an agency that focused on people in the entertainment industry, but that was my last job before I went private practice.
Okay.
So I'm very, very aware of how the entertainment community was affected by COVID. It was just like, not only from a financial aspect, but even an emotional. When your role, when your job is to, one that you are responsible for helping people emote, and feel, that is very different from someone that's an accountant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very different thing. And to lose the ability to be able to express, emote in the way that an entertainer is used to doing, like, it can be such a loss. I dealt with a lot of people that were really grieving the loss of their careers.
Yeah. If you worked in the entertainment industry, then you know there was even this Facebook group of entertainers and all the support people in film and theater. It was called "The Pandemic Came and Now I'm Left with a Great Big Hole." And there were people would just go on there. It was helpful. You know, you could, well, they gave tips on how to collect unemployment, right? But also you could bitch and moan about how much this sucked. Because, you know, I have to tell you, Evan, I was happy for you, but you were able to work, you know, to keep your job during the pandemic. You worked from home. And
Yeah,
you could,
that was a big surprise. Yeah, but talking about entertainment, I was punching a hole through the walls and doing the Zoom shows and Instagram and whatever I could do. So when it finally came about that we could perform live again, I just exploded onto the stage.
Yes,
I never appreciated it so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's, yeah.
Well, what did they say? You don't know what you got till it's gone, right?
Yeah.
Well, to your point, Wendy, about, you know, taking your power back, you know, there were so many people that started self-producing their own content, and, you know, maybe not making great money, but just doing something that they could call their own was very satisfying, right? And of course, still be able to get their unemployment if they needed to, and that's what kept them afloat. But just being able to still be creative in some realm, some aspect. It was very gratifying. And
that is exactly what I did. I developed 3 shows during that time, and one of them got picked up by Glued TV, which is great. Very excited. Financial opportunities, the whole 9 yards. But when I started all of this, I had no idea. But I was telling my guests on another show today, I had a great life before all of this. I did. But I was forced, like many people, to, as Evan say, creatively reinvent myself, put together a whole new package, and basically at this stage of the game, when I would have liked to be throwing bonbons in the air, I got to start over. And guess what? You are an inspiration to me, Dwayne, because at 48 years old, you decided, I'm going to quote that movie, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going back to school. Okay. I know I'd be good at this. You know, I'm a good listener. I like listening to people. And you took it is a risk, because that is still later in life. You know, when most people are still humming along, singing a song, you went back to school for something that was different than you were doing.
Well, what people have a hard time, I think people are getting better at it. But sometimes people think that they're going to have the same career or in the same field forever. And, you know, things change. You know, there's ageism out there, you know, depending on what industry you're in. It's like, you know,
don't even
get forced out just by you can be the best at your job, but if you're getting older, like, it can be a challenge.
Right.
And you have to be able to reinvent yourself. You have to be able to, you know, because ego can get in the way. Oh, like, I'm going to be fine. But like, no, like, facing reality and being like, okay, what is it that I need to do next for myself? Right. And realizing that, you know, yeah, there's like maybe some change that needs to take place.
Right. But it's still, okay, now we're getting back to the thing about fear. Okay. Many times, you know, it can be scary. It's scary to, you know, jump off of that cliff, knowing that there's always a chance your parachute may not open. Okay, so that's a little scary, and that's where the fear steps in. But what you have to remember is you can't let that overtake you. I call it the 3 a.m. thing, where I wake up with those. I know, Evan, you must have gone through this. You wake up at 3 a.m. and all of those thoughts are, you know,
during the whole quarantine. I was waking up every night at like 3 or 4 times. It was something.
Right. Yeah. I created, for the 3 a.m. wake up with the what if thoughts, I created what I call the worry shelf. I imagine this shelf, and it's across from my bed, and I take one thought out at a time, these bad thoughts, and I put them on the worry shelf. And then I make sure my brain's all clean. And then I replace it with happy. What makes me happy? Maybe I saw a bunch of flowers that day, or I love dogs, a particular dog that made me smile. But I feel at 3 a.m., I'll fill my brain with the positive thoughts. And most of the time, I will fall right back asleep. But that's
a great technique.
It's something, I discovered myself. And listen, people come to you as a therapist. What you're giving them the strength of self-discovery and the empowerment that they can, create stuff for themselves to get them through. You're not there 24/7 for them. And they've got to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and get through whatever they need to get through, which brings me to the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. I know a little bit about this because my daughter went for CBT, cognitive-based therapy, and I remember the therapist giving her tools, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's actually CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Okay.
And then there's also MBCT, which is Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy.
So what's the difference?
CBT, yeah. So CBT is a little more concrete, and it's about how to learn to reframe unhelpful thinking patterns. So you were kind of talking about that a little bit yourself, about how you kind of reframe at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So there are 11 different unhelpful thinking patterns. And
11.
As humans, we each have 2 or 3 ride or dies. So a few of them are, I don't know if I have them all, but catastrophizing, black and white thinking, comparing and despairing, mental filter, meaning only looking at one type of evidence, emotional reasoning, which is like, if I feel this way, it must be real. Like whatever they're thinking must be real. Okay. So anyway, there's these different types of unhelpful thinking patterns, and CBT helps you identify your unhelpful thinking, and then from there, learn to reframe the unhelpful thinking. And it's not easy. A visual of this would be like, if your mind was a jungle, and you had this automatic thought, this way of thinking about something, there would be this path to the right that, like, the path is the jungle path is cleared, the vines are out of the way, and you have this automatic thought or way of thinking about a certain thing.
Yeah.
What cognitive behavioral therapy does is help you reframe that unhelpful thought and come over to this side of the jungle and start a new path. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like, something happens, you have this unhelpful thought, and after you reframed and made this new way of thinking, you actually pause before you go down that old worn path, and you actually come over here and you go down this path, and you learn to just always go back. Like, I'm about to catastrophize, and you stop, you reframe it, and you literally get to the point where you go to this new path. The old path gets it's actually a neuronal pathway. This is really in your brain. So the neuronal pathway gets closed up, and the new pathway is the new thought.
Evan, how fascinating is this?
Well, I have to say, because some things have taken me years and years and years, just because how I was brought up with a severe narcissist who would put me down a lot, and there are certain things in my mind, and I found myself lately, I'm doing well with this, is that I found that I was putting myself down about certain things, and I said out loud, I said, stop it. Stop putting yourself down like that.
Yes.
And I was
That's
like,
called labeling.
I was like, wow, I'm actually saying it out loud, and I didn't even realize that it was so far back in my mind. I was going that much deeper and stopping myself from doing that.
That
is really great training of the mind.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you should control your mind, not your mind controlling you. You know, we can find ourselves an automatic pilot and we just think, and we have to slow the mind down. And that's how we get to mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So the formula for CBT is quite concrete in the way that you're trained to reframe, whereas MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, is a lot less structured, and it's around being mindful. Back to the CBT real quick. So when it comes to CBT, there's cognitive behavioral, and the reason it's called behavioral, or why behavioral's in the name, is because a lot of times if you will change some of your behaviors, like drinking, 6 glasses of water, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, eating 3 square meals, your mood state will even out. Watching your alcohol or substance intake, all of those things titrate your mood state, right? And so if you will pay attention to your behaviors, you'll find that you're less you'll find that you are able to reframe unhelpful thinking much easier.
By observing your own behaviors. By observing your own behaviors, by paying attention to your
Yes. And so CBT is there, right? But then mindfulness is really about being more mindful in your existence, in your day. Like being very mindful, like literally, like one of the first things I train people to do is to be mindful for regular activities of living. So like be mindful as I give them homework of like being mindful while they're washing the dishes. So from the moment you pick up the dishwashing liquid, and the moment you squeeze the dishwashing liquid onto the plate, and then the sponge on the plate, and your hand, like, is the water warm? Is the water cold? Like, being very brushing your teeth and actually paying attention to every tooth. Like when you start slowing down and being more mindful, you will find that your mood state evens out.
That's real. Wow. I have learned so much from you. We only have like a few minutes left, but first of all, thank you. So this state of mindfulness, as you were saying it made me think of that saying, take time to smell the roses, walking over to the rose and smelling it. And
smelling it. Yes.
If I'm guilty of anything, it's I don't do anything of what you just described. Everything is like an automatic pilot, if you will. So I want to see what happens in my brain when I take time to try some of this. Really great. Real quick, because we only have 2 minutes left. You're a Buddhist. How much of Buddhism do you apply to your everyday life and some of what we talked about tonight?
So it's the art of sitting. It's like I definitely, I will say this. I practice Buddhism very regularly for a very long time. And the last couple of years, just based on the pandemic, which you would think I would go toward it, but I was so busy at this agency and so influx that I kind of got away from it. And I just went on a 6-day BIPOC silent retreat. And it totally hit the reset button.
That's so powerful.
I feel centered. I feel back kind of like in my skin. And no, Buddhism plays a big part. Now, I'm very careful when it comes to working with people and I'm talking about Buddhism and they don't know that I'm talking about Buddhism.
Right.
Like it's a fine line. Like some people are very sensitive around religion or spirituality. So I share tenets and pieces of it in my work, but I don't, I try not to. They're being exposed to Buddhism and they don't even know it, basically.
Well, it sounds like you universalize it so it can apply to all kinds of belief systems, because I practice a Native American tradition for many, many years, and it has to do with silence and all the things that are not said and what's in between the words. And sounds exactly like what I do. So, yeah.
Well, before we go, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I can use a lot of what you talked about tonight because I realized my sitting state, I'm ready to jump out of my skin if I'm not doing something.
Always.
Right. No, Evan, you know that. I'm always.
I'd be happy to lead you in a 15-minute meditation, guided meditation to get you started.
That would be great. And yes, I know you plan on doing workshops and things like that. And I would be interested in coming to a workshop. So you'll keep us in the loop. Before we go, I always take one quick picture. Everybody say cheese. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you so much. I wish you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, so much love with your practice.
Evan, it was very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, you'll see more of Evan. You definitely will. And maybe you can come to some of our shows. I'll give you the information. Got a bunch of stuff coming up. Thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. We will see you next week. Please stay cool, stay calm, stay collected, stay focused, and take time to smell the roses. Good night, everybody.